Syncretic Cosmologies of the Modern Era, an analysis of the encased dome, asteroid seal, and dimensional outer planets. Introduction to the encased dome cosmology. The history of cosmological thought is defined by humanity's continuous effort to map the observable universe onto prevailing philosophical, theological, and scientific paradigms. Throughout antiquity, these models relied on geocentric architectures, rigid celestial spheres, and complex mythological narratives to explain the movements of the stars, the planets, and the overarching sky. In contemporary discourse, however, highly customized, speculative cosmologies have emerged on the fringes of internet subcultures, alternative history communities, and modern esoteric sects. One such model posits a highly intricate, non-standard cosmography, a flat or strictly geocentric Earth enclosed by a rigid firmament, an inner zone containing the terrestrial planets, including Mars, an asteroid wall, serving as a structural seal or physical boundary within this encased dome, and the outer planets existing not as physical bodies, but as spherical dimensions suspended in a primordial cosmic ocean. This specific architecture does not exist as a unified model in any standard historical, ancient, or classical cosmology. Ancient cultures were entirely unaware of the asteroid belt, and their classification of the classical planets did not separate them into distinct physical and dimensional categories based on orbital distance. Instead, the analysis indicates that this framework represents a modern, highly syncretic speculative theory, frequently associated with highly tailored flat Earth interpretations and antediluvian, pre-flood, alternative histories. It selectively appropriates the terminology of modern astronomy, such as the division between inner rocky planets and outer gas giants, as well as the existence of the asteroid belt, and retrofits these scientific concepts into an archaic, literalist interpretation of ancient Near Eastern, ANE, and esoteric belief systems. By transforming physical astronomical phenomena into metaphysical architecture, this cosmology attempts to reconcile empirical observations with a rigid, anthropocentric worldview. The resulting synthesis is a cosmological framework that replaces gravitational mechanics and cosmic vacuums with spiritual determinism, theological architecture, and structural boundaries. To understand the origins, mechanics, and philosophical implications of this encased dome cosmology, it is necessary to exhaustively deconstruct its foundational components. This comprehensive report provides an in-depth examination of the model, analyzing the historical precedents of the firmament, the reclassification of the inner planets as trapped material luminaries, the architectural function of the asteroid wall as a cosmic seal, the ontological shift of the outer planets into spherical dimensions, and the encompassing metaphysical medium of the celestial waters. The architectural foundation, the firmament and the cosmic ocean. The foundational premise of the speculative model in question relies on the existence of a firmament, a solid, overarching dome that encapsulates the terrestrial realm and protects it from a limitless expanse of water. This concept is deeply rooted in ancient Near Eastern cosmologies, most notably within Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and ancient Hebrew traditions, which all shared the fundamental belief that the universe was a structured, localized oasis surrounded by chaotic, primordial waters. Ancient Hebrew cosmology and the Rakia. In the ancient Hebrew model, which serves as the primary textual and theological anchor for modern literalist cosmologies, the universe is fundamentally aquatic. The Genesis creation narrative details the formation of the world not from nothingness, but from a pre-existing watery chaos known as the deep, or Tehom. The creation process involves the deliberate separation of this primordial deep through the introduction of the Rakia, a Hebrew term commonly translated as the firmament. The firmament was conceived as a vast, solid dome. Scriptural references describe it as being stretched out and possessing a rigid, metallic strength, famously characterized in the Book of Job as being strong as a molten mirror. Its primary cosmic function was architectural rather than merely atmospheric. It was designed specifically to divide the waters above from the waters below, creating a habitable, pressurized pocket within the cosmic ocean. Within this biblical framework, the Earth is central, stationary, and likely conceptualized as a flat disk resting on foundational pillars. The Sun, the Moon, and all the visible planets, often referred to as wandering stars, or the host of heaven, were believed to be located within, or physically attached to, the interior of this firmament. Egyptian and Mesopotamian parallels. This architectural view of the cosmos was not isolated to Hebrew theology. It was the prevailing scientific and religious consensus of the ancient Near East. Egyptian cosmology offers a parallel, highly personified structure. In this tradition, the sky is represented by the goddess Nut, whose star-studded body arches over the earth god, Geb. The stars are affixed directly to her body, acting as the firmament itself. Furthermore, the The Egyptian planets and the Sun were not seen as orbiting in a vacuum but were conceptualized as divine beings sailing across a celestial, watery ocean in sacred barks. Similarly, Mesopotamian cosmologies envisioned a multi-tiered universe enclosed entirely within a cosmic ocean. The heavens were reserved for the pantheon of gods, while the central earth and its immediate atmosphere served as the domain of mortals, with a netherworld situated below. In the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, a firmament is literally constructed by the supreme god Marduk from the severed half of the slain water goddess Tiamat, acting as a structural roof to hold back the chaotic upper waters. Cosmological tradition. Representation of the sky, dome. Relationship to cosmic waters. Placement of planets. Ancient Hebrew. Rakia, solid firmament, molten mirror. Divides waters above from waters below. Placed within or under the firmament. Ancient Egyptian. Goddess Nut, arch body. Celestial ocean navigated by solar barks. Sailing across the interior sky, body of Nut. Mesopotamian. Roof made from Tiamat's corpse. Keeps the chaotic primordial waters at bay. Domains of the gods within the multi-tiered sky. Divergence in the modern speculative model. While the modern speculative cosmology borrows the exact terminology and structural premise of the biblical firmament and the cosmic ocean, it introduces a radical, anachronistic departure regarding planetary placement. In classical antiquity and the orthodox biblical model, all classical planets visible to the naked eye, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, are strictly contained within the firmament. They are co-located in the same overarching physical or spiritual space, moving across the same celestial ceiling. The speculative modern model, however, forcefully bifurcates the planetary system. It retains the inner planets within the dome but ejects the outer planets into the cosmic ocean beyond the firmament, redefining their very nature. This indicates a uniquely modern interpolation, wherein post-telescopic knowledge of the solar system's spatial layout is selectively harvested and mapped onto a pre-telescopic mythological structure. The necessity of a rigid dome is retained not merely to hold back the physical waters of the deep, but to serve as an ontological quarantine boundary, fundamentally isolating the dense material realm from higher-order dimensional realities that exist outside it. The terrestrial enclosure, Mars and the inner planets. The classification of Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars as inner planets is a standard astronomical convention based on their orbital position relative to the asteroid belt and their shared terrestrial, rocky composition. In the encased dome cosmology, this scientific demarcation is eagerly adopted, but it is entirely stripped of its gravitational and heliocentric context, serving instead as a metaphysical boundary line defining what is trapped inside the physical dome. The astrophysical reality of the inner planets. Standard astrophysics defines the inner planets as relatively small, dense, and composed predominantly of non-volatile materials, heavy silicates, and metallic cores. This sharply contrasts with the massive, volatile-rich gas giants of the outer solar system. For example, the mass of Mars is approximately 0.11 times that of Earth, and its diameter is roughly 0.53 times Earth's diameter, making it a distinctly small, rocky neighbor. The orbital mechanics of these inner planets are dictated entirely by heliocentric gravitation. According to Newtonian physics and Kepler's laws of planetary motion, the gravitational force between two objects is defined by the equation. Because of their proximity to the Sun, inner planets move faster along their orbital paths than outer planets. Historically, this difference in orbital speed accounted for the apparent retrograde motion of planets like Mars. As the faster-moving Earth overtakes the slower-moving Mars, Mars appears to loop backward in the night sky relative to the background stars, a phenomenon mathematically proven by Copernicus and Kepler to be an optical illusion caused by parallax shifts, rather than actual backward movement. The relationship between the Earth's period, the planet's synodic period, and the sidereal period, is expressed mathematically as the epistemology of materiality, Mars inside the dome. The speculative modern cosmology completely rejects the heliocentric explanation of parallax and the gravitational mechanics of Keplerian orbits. However, it faces a profound epistemological problem regarding Mars and the inner planets, their undeniable physical materiality. With the advent of modern astronomy, telescopes, and space exploration, the physical nature of Mars is irrefutable. Mars possesses a heavily cratered surface, distinct polar ice caps, and observable geological features akin to the Grand Canyon. Furthermore, the physical reality of Mars is confirmed by the study of Martian meteorites. Fragments blasted from the Martian surface by large impacts have escaped Mars' lower gravity, 38% of Earth's, and eventually fallen to Earth as meteorites. These volcanic basalts contain tiny trapped gas bubbles that perfectly match the atmospheric properties of Mars as measured directly by landers. Because Mars can be empirically proven to be a solid, physical entity composed of rock, dirt, and trapped gases, the speculative cosmology has no choice but to permit its existence within the physical dome. By situating Mars and the inner planets inside the firmament, the model creates a localized, quarantine zone of dense matter. The inner planets are thus relegated to the material trap of the universe. They are not independent worlds orbiting in an infinite vacuum, but localized physical luminaries operating exclusively within the mechanical constraints of the dome. Their movements are viewed not as the result of gravity, but as complex, possibly mechanical or electromagnetic pathways inscribed into the interior architecture of the firmament itself. The inner solar system is thereby redefined as the totality of the physical universe, a small, enclosed terrarium containing all solid matter. Feature: Standard astronomical model. Encased dome speculative model. Definition of inner planets. Terrestrial planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, orbiting the Sun. Material luminaries localized strictly within the physical dome. Planetary composition: silicate rocks, metals, differentiated cores, measurable atmospheres. Dense physical matter, inherently linked to the flawed material realm. Orbital mechanics. Heliocentric gravitation, explaining apparent retrograde motion via parallax. Geocentric, moving along fixed, guided pathways or electromagnetic tracks. The role of Mars. The fourth planet from the Sun, adjacent terrestrial neighbor. The outermost physical luminary before the firmament's boundary seal. The asteroid wall, the mechanics of the cosmic seal. Perhaps the most unique and highly specific element of this speculative cosmology is its treatment of the asteroid belt. Situated between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, the asteroid belt acts as the dividing line between the inner and outer solar system. The speculative model seizes upon this astronomical boundary and transforms it into a literal architectural feature of the universe. The scientific reality of the asteroid belt. In standard cosmology, the asteroid belt is not a dense wall or a physical barrier. It is a circumstellar disk containing irregularly shaped bodies, planetesimals, and debris that failed to coalesce into a full-size planet primarily due to the immense gravitational perturbations and sheer magnitude of Jupiter's gravity. Although the belt contains millions of individual asteroids, it is overwhelmingly empty space. The total mass of the asteroid belt is incredibly small, estimated to be only a tiny fraction of the Earth's mass, and even less than the mass of the Earth's moon. The distance between individual sizable asteroids is vast, meaning that spacecraft navigation through the belt is relatively safe and uneventful. The scientific consensus, supported by decades of astronomical observation and orbital mechanics, views the belt as diffuse debris rather than a continuous, cohesive structure. The asteroid belt as a structural dome seal. The encased dome cosmology radically reinterprets this data, transforming the diffuse ring of planetary debris into a dense, structural asteroid wall that acts as a physical seal for the dome. This conceptualization elevates the asteroid belt from a byproduct of solar system formation to a deliberate, engineered architectural feature of the cosmos. In speculative fiction, the idea of an asteroid belt acting as a continuous physical barrier or hollowed-out boundary is common, often depicted as a wall requiring specialized navigation. However, in the context of this specific fringe cosmology, the wall takes on a metaphysical and structural imperative. It acts as the literal anchor point, the perimeter seal where the physical dome meets its foundation, holding back the cosmic ocean. This conceptualization draws heavily from catastrophic mythologies, antediluvian theories, and alternative history narratives, particularly those surrounding the hypothetical planet Phaeton or the mythological entity Tiamat. According to ancient alien theorists and alternative historians like Zechariah Sitchin, the asteroid belt was not formed by failed accretion, but by the cataclysmic destruction of a former terrestrial planet, often referred to as Tiamat or Electra. In these esoteric interpretations, a rogue celestial body, Nibiru or Marduk, operating on a retrograde orbit collided with Tiamat, tearing the planet asunder. The resulting cosmic rubble formed the hammered bracelet, or the asteroid belt. By defining the asteroid belt as a seal, the speculative model synthesizes this catastrophic mythos with the biblical firmament. It implies that the dome was locked, closed, or structurally reinforced after a specific antediluvian catastrophe. The seal prevents the waters of the infinite cosmic ocean from breaching the inner dome, and it prevents humanity, and the inner planets, from escaping the physical enclosure. The rocks and debris that make up the asteroid belt are therefore not viewed as space rubble, but as the mortar, the foundational rubble, or the literal structural perimeter of the encased system. This creates a closed thermodynamic and metaphysical loop. Everything inside the asteroid wall is physical, constrained, and sealed, while everything outside the wall operates under entirely different ontological rules. The ontological shift: outer planets are spherical dimensions. Once the architectural boundary of the asteroid seal is crossed, the speculative cosmology initiates a profound ontological shift. The outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are no longer recognized as massive spheres of gas and ice orbiting in a vacuum. Instead, they are reclassified as spherical dimensions set within the surrounding water. This represents a complete abandonment of empirical astronomy in favor of esoteric geometry, Hermeticism, and Gnostic philosophy. The standard model of the outer planets. In contemporary astronomy, the outer planets are characterized by their massive size, their volatile chemical compositions, primarily hydrogen, helium, water, ammonia, and methane, and their immense distances from the Sun. Jupiter, the largest planet in the Solar System, possesses a mass roughly 317.8 times that of Earth and a diameter 11.21 times greater. Saturn is similarly massive, at 95.2 times the mass of Earth. These gas giants and their neighboring ice giants, Uranus and Neptune, exhibit complex atmospheric dynamics, massive magnetospheres, extensive ring systems, and dozens of captured satellites, such as Jupiter's ocean-bearing moon Europa. Their distances from the inner solar system are so vast that they are measured in astronomical units, AU, with Jupiter at 5.2 astronomical units, Saturn at 9.54 astronomical units, Uranus at 19.2 astronomical units, and Neptune sitting at roughly 30.1 astronomical units from the Sun. The scientific understanding of these planets is deeply rooted in the physical laws of gravity, thermodynamics, and fluid dynamics, with their formation occurring in the colder, outer regions of the protoplanetary disk where volatile compounds could condense into gas and ice rather than burning away. The esoteric concept of spherical dimensions. To understand why a cosmology would reclassify gas giants as spherical dimensions, one must look to esoteric, Gnostic, and multidimensional theoretical frameworks. In theoretical physics and advanced mathematics, spherical dimensions refers to coordinate systems or topological spaces where dimensions are orthogonal to a central origin. This allows for complex movement and magnitude calculation in non-Cartesian spaces, where directions are defined by zenithal and azimuthal angles rather than linear x, y, and z grids. However, in the context of the encased dome cosmology, the term dimension is not used as a mathematical coordinate, but as a plane of existence, a frequency of reality, or a spiritual realm. This interpretation draws heavily on Hermeticism, Gnosticism, and ancient astrology. In the doctrines of Renaissance occultists like Paracelsus, the firmament was not merely the cosmic heaven, but an astrum, or sidus, that possessed an endosomatic, within the body, reality. While modern science reduced the sky to a physical void and traditional astrology reduced it to a two-dimensional mathematical map for plotting horoscopes, ancient and esoteric astrologers viewed the planetary spheres as distinct, multidimensional spiritual realms possessing depth, roundness, and consciousness. In Gnostic philosophy, the physical, material universe, the dome, is often viewed as a flawed creation generated by a lesser, ignorant deity known as the demiurge, who seeks to trap divine sparks, human souls, in matter. The soul's ultimate goal is to escape this material trap by ascending through successive planetary spheres, guarded by archons, to reach the pleroma, the transcendent realm of infinite light and fullness that exists beyond the physical universe. While classical Gnosticism placed all 7 classical planets in this ladder of ascent, the modern speculative model adapts this ancient theology to account for modern astronomy. It shifts the boundary of the material trap from beyond Saturn to the asteroid belt. Because the outer planets are predominantly gaseous and lack solid, rocky surfaces, the speculative mind easily detaches them from the dense, material reality of rock and dirt found on Earth and Mars. They are thus reinterpreted as overlapping realities, spiritual zones, or higher density dimensional spaces that exist completely outside the physical quarantine of the dome. Resolving the problem of scale. This dimensional classification also conveniently solves the problem of scale and distance inherent in flat Earth or enclosed dome cosmologies. The massive distances, billions of miles, and enormous physical sizes of the outer planets threaten the structural integrity and logical coherence of a small, localized dome over the Earth. By redefining them as dimensions, the model completely removes the need for physical space. A dimension does not require physical distance in the same way a rocky planet does. It is a frequency, a state of being, or an overlaid topological space. Therefore, Jupiter is not a gas giant 400 million miles away. It is a spherical dimension manifesting its frequency in the metaphysical waters immediately beyond the firmament seal. Planet, body. Traditional astronomical status. Role in speculative cosmology. Ontological state. Mars. Fourth planet, terrestrial, rocky, 1.52 astronomical units. Inner luminary under the dome. Dense physical, material. Asteroid belt. Failed planetary debris disk. The cosmic seal, structural wall. Physical boundary line. Jupiter. Fifth planet, gas giant, 5.20 astronomical units. Spherical dimension. Metaphysical, extradimensional. Saturn. Sixth planet, gas giant, 9.54 astronomical units. Spherical dimension. Metaphysical, extradimensional. The cosmic ocean, a fluid extradimensional void. The final synthesizing component of this cosmology is the setting of the entire macrosystem within water. The outer planets, manifesting as spherical dimensions, and the exterior of the encased dome are all suspended in a limitless, primordial cosmic ocean. In standard astrophysics, the space between planets and stars is a near-perfect vacuum, punctuated only by solar wind, cosmic rays, and extremely sparse particulate matter. The historical concept of space as a fluid medium was definitively discarded following the Michelson-Morley experiment and the obsolescence of the luminiferous ether theory. However, the encased dome model resurrects the concept of celestial waters with absolute literalism. This is a direct continuation of the biblical waters above the firmament, Genesis chapter 1 verse 7. In the ancient mindset, the sky appears blue because it literally holds back a vast ocean of water. In this modern speculative framework, the water serves a highly specific dual purpose. First, it provides a required metaphysical medium. Just as sound requires a physical medium like air or water to travel, this cosmology posits that the spiritual dimensions, the outer planets, require a metaphysical substrate to exist and interact. The cosmic ocean is the primordial fluid of the universe, pure and untouched by the dense corruption of the material world enclosed within the dome. It acts as the amniotic fluid of the cosmos, nurturing the higher spherical dimensions. Secondly, the water introduces a concept of hydrostatic pressure. The asteroid wall and the rigid firmament dome are structurally required precisely because they must withstand the infinite pressure of the cosmic ocean. This lends a pseudo-scientific, architectural urgency to the cosmology. The firmament is not just a passive ceiling covering the Earth, it is an actively pressurized hull, a submarine-like encapsulation protecting the inner terrestrial planets and humanity from being crushed by the infinite, fluid void of the waters above. Modern flat Earth and antediluvian speculation, the syncretic engine. The cosmology described, an encased dome harboring inner terrestrial planets, sealed by an asteroid wall, with outer gas giants manifesting as spherical dimensions in a cosmic ocean, is a masterpiece of modern, Internet-era myth-making. It does not exist in the annals of orthodox antiquity, nor does it perfectly align with any single established esoteric school. Instead, it is a highly tailored, bespoke cosmology that is entirely symptomatic of the modern information age, where users synthesize disparate strands of theology, conspiracy, and misunderstood science into a unified whole. The hermeneutics of literalism and anomaly hunting. The creation of such a model requires a very specific epistemological approach. It begins with absolute biblical literalism, the unyielding belief in a physical firmament and actual celestial waters, rejecting allegorical or poetic interpretations of Genesis. However, unlike the ancient peoples of Mesopotamia or Israel who lacked telescopes and space probes, the modern creators of this model possess undeniable visual data regarding the solar system. They have seen high-resolution images of Mars craters, Jupiter's atmospheric bands, and Saturn's rings. To reconcile this modern, irrefutable visual data with ancient biblical literalism, the model engages in aggressive anomaly hunting and selective recategorization. It astutely observes the scientific demarcation between inner rocky planets and outer gaseous planets and weaponizes this astronomical distinction for theological purposes. The logic dictates that if the inner planets are demonstrably made of rock, they belong inside the material, physical dome. Conversely, if the outer planets are made of gas and lack solid surfaces, they are not physical in the traditional sense, and thus must belong outside the dome as dimensional anomalies or spiritual spheres. The asteroid belt, which conveniently separates these two zones in actual astronomical reality, is then structurally promoted to the role of a physical barrier or seal. This brilliantly solves the architectural problem of where the physical dome meets its foundation, providing a wall that locks the material world away from the dimensional waters. Antediluvian speculation and the rejection of the Copernican principle. This framework is heavily intertwined with antediluvian, pre-flood, speculation. Theorists operating in this space often suggest that human history is vastly older than acknowledged, and that previous, highly advanced archaic populations existed before a global cataclysm. In these narratives, the current configuration of the solar system is viewed as a broken or altered version of a prior, perfect state. The asteroid wall acts as the catastrophic scar of this event, a seal placed over the Earth to quarantine it after a cosmic rebellion, locking humanity inside the firmament. Fundamentally, this cosmology represents a complete rejection of the Copernican principle, which states that the Earth does not occupy a special or privileged physical location in the universe. The standard heliocentric model, governed by indifferent gravity and vast expanses of lifeless vacuum, places humanity on an insignificant speck of dust in a cold, expanding universe. The psychological weight of this infinite insignificance can be profoundly alienating. The encased dome cosmology is a radical, complex psychological rejection of this alienation. By drawing a hard, physical perimeter at the asteroid belt, the model forcefully shrinks the universe into a manageable, human-centric terrarium. It re-establishes the Earth as the undisputed focal point of creation. The classification of Mars as an inner planet within the dome acknowledges the reality of modern space exploration, conceding that humanity can send rovers to Mars, but strictly limits that exploration to the quarantine zone of the physical dome. The asteroid wall dictates a hard limit. Humanity can go no further. The physical universe has a defined end. Simultaneously, the model satiates the human desire for the transcendent and mystical by converting the outer solar system into spherical dimensions. It suggests that reality is not just dead matter and empty vacuum, but a layered, multi-dimensional spiritual architecture waiting beyond the watery seal. Conclusion. The cosmology featuring a firmament holding inner planets like Mars, an asteroid wall acting as a structural seal, and outer planets existing as spherical dimensions set within a cosmic ocean is an extraordinary example of modern speculative synthesis. It is an intricate, highly tailored patchwork that stitches together the architectural rigidities of ancient Near Eastern and biblical cosmologies, the specific astronomical realities of planetary composition and orbital divisions, and the metaphysical hierarchies of esoteric, Paracelsian, and Gnostic traditions. Through its radical reinterpretation of scientific boundaries, turning the compositional divide between terrestrial and Jovian planets into a profound ontological divide between dense matter and spirit, and transforming the asteroid belt from orbital debris into an architectural seal, this framework attempts to resolve the friction between religious literalism and post-Enlightenment astronomy. It ultimately constructs a universe that operates not on the indifferent, mathematically observable laws of gravitation and thermodynamics, but on the principles of metaphysical quarantine, spiritual dimensionality, and divine architectural intent. The model stands as a fascinating sociological testament to the enduring human impulse to organize the cosmos into a structure that guarantees ultimate significance, providing defined, protective boundaries against the terrifying vastness of the infinite unknown.